Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to do a recap of the Eagles offseason now that the NFL draft is over. This will be made of free agency, who they've signed to extensions, who they've lost, who they've gained, who they drafted, and really everything that happened so far in the offseason. To start things off, I guess I'll start with the painful end of last season for all Eagles fans. As you know, the Eagles started off super hot, were the best team in the NFL, had the best record in the NFL, and then went on to lose 6 of their last 7 games, including a loss to the Cardinals and the Giants and the Buccaneers. It's just embarrassing. To start the offseason off, there was a lot of talk that Coach Sirianni might even get fired. However, they decided not to. He is still there, but some changes had to be made. That, of course, was firing his offensive and defensive coordinators. So Brian Johnson and Sean Desai can't hurt you anymore, Eagles fans. And the Eagles replaced them with some very good coordinators. Instead of picking young, up-and-coming head coaches, as they did in the previous season, this time Nick Sirianni decided to pick some tried-and-true, tested NFL talent. That is Vic Fangio, a premier defensive coordinator who, for the past several years, the Eagles have been hiring his disciples. Now we get the real thing. And then on the offensive side of the ball, they signed Kellen Moore, who, of course, was a highly touted Cowboys offensive coordinator for a long time. So, at least so far, from my perspective, this seems like an upgrade. Now to start off all the transactions that happened, and there are a lot. First things first, we did lose 2 all-time greats for the Eagles. 2 Eagles Hall of Famers, Jason Kelce and Fletcher Cox, have both announced that they're retiring. And while people have joked around that maybe they'll come back, they can convince them to come back, I highly doubt it. It's especially Jason Kelce. There's a small chance Fletcher Cox comes back and, does the thing where he plays half the season for a really good team. But I think as far as his Eagle career, I think it's just over at this point. And this will be the first time in over a decade without these star players who were still playing very well. You can easily argue that Fletcher Cox was the best defensive player and Jason Kelce was one of the best offensive players on the team last year, so this will hurt. But it does give the rookies some time to actually play. The Eagles did lose some players in free agency as well. I would say the biggest one was DeAndre Swift, who had an excellent year with the Eagles, and he signed with the Bears for a good-sized contract. And then the Eagles also lost a handful of offensive linemen who were more of depth pieces. But Howie Roseman did some really big moves in free agency, and I think he is bringing in more talent than he lost, at least through free agency. First off, Saquon Barkley, he signed for a big contract, biggest contract a running back has had since Christian McCaffrey, and he will, of course, be replacing DeAndre Swift. I personally don't love this because I just don't believe in paying running backs high dollar, especially, Saquon Barkley just doesn't seem that much better than anyone else. But for the next year or two, it will probably look pretty good. I'm just a little iffy on how it impacts their cap space. The Eagles also signed CJ Gardner-Johnson. Of course, he was great with the Eagles in 2022. Then he left because there's a whole dispute where he thought he was worth more money. The Eagles didn't. Then it turned out nobody was willing to pay him the money he wanted. He tried to go back to the Eagles. The Eagles had already spent his money, so he had to leave. A little messy. And he did have a pretty rocky season last year because he was injured for a majority of it. However, when he's on the field, he is electric, and hopefully he helps the Eagles' safeties, which was a weakness in the prior year. The final major free agency pickup for the Eagles was Bryce Huff, who was an edge rusher for the New York Jets. Now, he didn't actually get to play that much. He had pretty limited snaps. But when he did play, he was excellent at rushing the passer. So what this is Howie Roseman is taking a big gamble that he will improve with more playing time. He will keep up his percentages of pressure rates and sack rates, and that he will improve at being a rushing defender, however you say that word. So as you can tell so far, Howie Roseman had a very busy offseason, and I am only halfway through it. But if you've enjoyed this video so far, please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting down below. But back to the video. The next major thing the Eagles did this offseason is something that a lot of people probably don't think about, but it is super important. And that is signing the talent on your roster to extensions. The Eagles re-signed pretty much everybody that was eligible to be re-signed that had earned it at this point. Landon Dickerson had got a 4-year contract extension, a Pro Bowl guard. Braden Mann, the punter, got a 2-year contract. Jake Elliott, the kicker, got a 4-year contract. Devontae Smith, of course, the excellent young wide receiver, got a 3-year contract extension on top of what he already had. Jordan Mailata got a 3-year contract extension. And then finally, on the day of the draft, A.J. Brown got a contract extension as well. Now, this is not a really sexy thing to do. It doesn't make the headlines, but it's super important to developing a team that can compete for a long time. Up next, a quick and crucial part of the Howie Roseman offseason is trading. Not all teams do it, but Howie loves it. First off, Kenny Picket, the new Eagles backup quarterback. Yay, I'm sure everybody loves it. But he was a first-round pick and a starter last year, so hopefully he'll be good enough for the Eagles backup. I mean, really, hopefully Jalen never gets hurt, but, he probably will at some point. The Eagles acquired Kenny Pickett in a 2024 4th-round pick from Pittsburgh for a 2024 3rd-round pick and 7th-round pick. So I believe this nets out to about a 5th to 6th round pick traded for Kenny Pickett, and you get him for 2 years for very cheap. I think this was a great trade. Not everybody loved it because everyone wanted Justin Fields at the time, but if you look at the contracts, it actually made more sense for Kenny Pickett because you get an additional year for cheaper. Up next, a less popular trade in my opinion, and I honestly... I don't really like this one. This is one thing Howie did where, I don't know, he traded Hassan Reddick to the New York Jets for a conditional 3rd round pick, and it's in 2025, and the conditions are if he plays a certain percentage of the snaps and gets a certain amount of sacks, then it turns into a 2nd round pick. However, he's so good. He's been one of the best players on the Eagles' entire team the past 2 years, ever since he's been there. I feel like he was worth more than that. I feel like the team could have just kept him at his current contract with some, I don't know, maybe some incentives to make him sort of happy. But trading away such a good player for so little kind of disappointed me. And then the final trades, I'll say trades because there were 9 of them, were draft day trades from Howie Roseman, and he was wheeling and dealing on day 2 and 3. He tied the record for most trades in an NFL draft, and he was able to pick up multiple picks for next year in which the Eagles were a little light on draft capital. And last but not least, speaking of the NFL draft, who did the Eagles draft? And I personally really like this draft, at least the first few picks. The Eagles got Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo, and he was the first cornerback picked with the 22nd overall pick. A lot of people mocked him going about number 10 overall, and a majority of the teams and drafts that I saw had him as the best corner in the draft. So getting the best corner at pick 22, not having to trade up, is excellent. And then Howie knowing that he could just wait. I think he played day 1 perfectly. And then on day 2, getting Cooper DeJean, I've heard it several ways. But getting Cooper, or as you know, the white corner from Iowa. And, everybody's going to love him, honestly, probably just because he's a white corner and you never see that. In the NFL, he might be a safety or he might be a corner. It's a little unknown at this point, but he is super talented and very impressive. So these top 2 picks, 2 corners, 2 DBs, however you put it, excellent pickups from Howie Roseman. In the 3rd round, he picked Jalix Hunt, which is apparently a extremely raw edge rusher out of Houston Christian College, which I have never heard of. Apparently it used to be Houston Baptist College, which I also have never heard of. And he is supposed to be an athletic freak who is raw. So we'll see if he can turn into anything or not. In the 4th round, they traded back a bunch and ended up with Will Shipley from Clemson, who is kind of a do-everything running back. In the 5th round, the Eagles picked up Anais Smith, which is a slot wide receiver from Texas A&M. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. out of Clemson, a linebacker. Trevor Keegan out of Michigan, who is a guard. And then in the 6th round, the Eagles got Johnny Wilson, who is a very tall and moderately fast wide receiver out of Florida State. He could destroy some short corners, at least in college. And then their last pick in the 6th round was Dylan McMahon, which is a guard out of NC State. And pretty much every draft grade I've seen has given the Eagles an A for this year's draft. It is nice to see them finally not reaching for picks like they used to. So where does this all leave the Eagles? They had some big losses in this offseason, some monumental losses in players. Will they be able to make up for it? I believe so. Vegas is a little unsure. They have the Eagles as the 7th most likely team to win the Super Bowl, behind the 49ers and the Lions in the NFC, but right ahead of the Cowboys. So the Eagles, while yes, they could put it all together, or who knows, maybe Nick Sirianni just doesn't have it, and when they were falling apart at the end of last year, maybe it continues and they just fall apart for the entire year this year. But as an Eagles fan, I have my hopes up high. But I hope this was helpful if you just haven't been paying too much attention to the team and you just wanted one video that gets you caught up on everything. But please like, subscribe, and comment down below, and I will see you later.